With training camp just around the corner, talks have become non-existent between Broncos wideout Demaryius Thomas and the team themselves. Over a month, in fact, that according to ESPN's Adam Schefter, the two sides trying to work out a long-term deal. I'm John Brickley. Let's welcome in ESPN.com's Kevin Seifert for more on this developing story. And Kevin, we know the deadline is coming up, 4 p.m. Eastern time, for both sides to iron out a long-term deal. If not, Thomas has to go with the franchise tag for this coming season. But what are the chances that the two sides can lock down that long-term deal?
You know, right now, John, there's not a lot of optimism, I think, at least from a public standpoint, when you hear reports that there hasn't been discussions for a month. But I will say that these things have a funny thing of heating up as the deadline approaches. And if you talk to a guy like Bill Polian or one of those people who's been through it a long time, they'll tell you that things that have been dormant for a long period of time can heat up in the 24 hours or so before a deadline. And so you can't rule out the possibility that they'll get to the table and realize that it would be better for everyone to get a long-term deal done before 4 o'clock on Wednesday. But at the moment, it doesn't appear that there's a ton of optimism that will happen.
If they don't get it done, what's the reaction going to be by the Denver front office? What's his future going to be in Denver? And I'm curious to see what Peyton Manning's reaction is going to be on this whole deal.
Yeah, the Broncos are a unique team. I mean, with Peyton Manning as a quarterback, he really is a year-to-year guy. Some people think this could be his last year. He's certainly not going to play too much longer if he does play beyond this season. And so I don't think Peyton Manning and probably at least even John Elway and the Broncos are looking too far beyond this season because they're going to be a much different team whenever Peyton Manning does, in fact, step away. So they're really focused on this year. They put the franchise tag on Demaryius Thomas to make sure they'd have him, on their roster for the 2015 season. And beyond that, I think they'll deal with it if they have to.
Got to give credit to Thomas, though. He's been playing the PR mode pretty well, saying that even if he does play under the franchise tag, he still believes that this Denver team is a Super Bowl contender. If he doesn't sign the long-term deal and has to go under the franchise tag, could we see this playing out as a major distraction at all for that locker room in Denver?
I wouldn't think so. I think most players realize that every player should try, and they want every player to try to get as much money and the best deal that they possibly can. That's good for all the players, and it's good for the individual as well. It's possible if there's some sort of training camp holdout, if he feels the need to step away a little bit just to prove his point, that there'll be a few extra questions from the media and that sort of thing. But it's a pretty veteran locker room in Denver, and I think most of those guys know what the deal is and know that this is sort of part of the process. As long as he doesn't feel compelled to miss any regular season games, and that doesn't seem like it makes a whole lot of sense because after Wednesday he can't get a multi-year deal even if he wanted it, and even if the Broncos wanted it, unless he decides to extend it any sort of holdout into the season. I can't imagine this being much of a distraction for a veteran team like the Broncos.
Great perspective from ESPN.com's Kevin Seifert on the Broncos situation involving Demaryius Thomas as the two sides are trying to iron out a long-term deal. Interesting note about Thomas, since 2011, he's registered 28 100-yard receiving games.